everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead. This week, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to ITV's Creative Diversity Partner and Chair of the BAFTA Disability Group, Sam Tatlow MBE. My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hey Sam, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you, Evie. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great, thank you. Have you got anything nice planned for today?
I'm at work, so I've just got work to do, but I'm very much looking forward to the weekend.
Oh my gosh, yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm on half term at the minute, which is really nice. So I'm sort of looking forward to my last couple of days of half term before I have to go back to school.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely making the most of the week off. But then luckily the half term from when I get back to Easter, it's quite short, which is nice.
Oh, good.
Yes. So to begin with then, can you tell me a little bit about your disability?
Sure. Absolutely. I guess maybe shall I start with an audio description? That might be quite helpful for you. So
Yeah, sure.
I guess I should really describe myself as a white middle-aged woman, which makes me feel really sad. But I guess that's technically what I am now, but young at heart. I've got blonde hair that's cut into a bob just under my kind of jawline, and I'm currently wearing a kind of royal blue jumper. And in the background, you can see there's a Highland cow painting that's multicolored on the wall, and it's always something that people pick up on when I come onto a Zoom or a meeting room. So I can never change the decor of my living room, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm a person of short stature, so I stand at 3'7", but I also use an electric wheelchair. So if I'm out and about, that's what I'll be sat in. I have my disability. I'm a person of short stature, and yeah, I use a wheelchair to get around out and about in the world.
Right, okay, cool. But yeah, that painting behind you, I don't think you're ever going to be able to change that now. You're kind of stuck with that decor, aren't you?
I really, really, really am. I really am. Unless I want to make a statement, you know.
I mean, yeah, you could do, but like, say you have a meeting with someone who you haven't had a meeting with for like 2 years and you change your decor, they're going to do a double take. They're going to be like, why have you changed the painting?
Yeah, it will take up a lot of the conversation time, that's for sure. That it already does, to be honest. Everybody always comments on it.
Love that though. That's really cute. Okay, so you currently work at ITV, but before we chat about that, could you tell me a little bit about your journey into the TV industry?
Sure. Gosh, how far back do you want me to go? I guess you're at school, Evie, so maybe I'll start there, because that is kind of where my journey started. I loved drama. Drama was my favourite subject at school, particularly at secondary school. I had an amazing drama teacher who I'm still in touch with, called Mr. Boileau, and he just was brilliant. He made it so fun. I learned so much from him, and we had a great time. So he really inspired me to pursue that. And so as I finished I did drama A level, And as I was thinking about what my next steps in the world would look like, I started thinking about drama school and studying kind of theatre at university. So I ended up going to Bretton Hall, which was part of Leeds University, to study theatre and performance in Leeds. So I was there for 3 years, and it was a really brilliant course, and I'm still friends with lots of my friends that I made at university there. We studied theory, we studied practical, we did some school tours, we did lots of really cool stuff. And as after I left university, as with anybody, kind of didn't really had to make decisions about what my life might look like and what I might want to do next. So I did a bit of work experience with a theatre company called Graeae Theatre Company, which is a disabled-led theatre company, and are just brilliant. They do such cool shows, and if you're a fan of theatre, I would really encourage you and your audience to go and see some of their stuff. I know you had Matt Fraser on your show a couple of episodes ago. He spoke about Graeae in your chat with him as well, and that company genuinely starts the careers of so many disabled people in the creative industries. Like, anybody that you speak to will have had a touch point with them at some point. So I did some work experience with them, and then ended up working for them for a while, where we did a bit of a school tour, and I went into schools and ran some workshops for them as part of their Whiter Than Snow tour, which was a reversioning of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs story. And we were teaching kids the science behind people who are short, basically, and it was really, really interesting and lovely and fascinating and great. I now have the absolute privilege to be the chair of their board of trustees, so it's a real full circle moment for me. So theatre was my first love, but unfortunately, as with anybody who works in the creative industries, after that project finished, I was then looking for my next job and what I was going to do next. And that's when I saw an advert on the television in the advert break between Hollyoaks. I don't know if are you a fan of Hollyoaks, Evie? Do you watch Hollyoaks?
I don't think I've ever watched it, to be honest.
So it was a kind of quite a big show for younger people at that time, and I remember I was watching it, and during the ad break, Channel 4 were advertising for a trainee scheme for anybody who wanted to work in television and who was disabled. And I was like, okay, well, I am disabled and I need a job. I've never thought about working in television before, but I'll give it a go. And I applied. It was the most fun job application I've ever gone through, and I was lucky enough to get on. So I got to work my first job in television was to work on the first series of Misfits, which is a bit of a cult show now, about superheroes and teenagers, and it was amazing. So I started my career in television on that show, and have freelanced in the industry, worked on various different productions before working for a company called Think Bigger that trained the disabled presenters and reporters for the coverage of the London 2012 Paralympic Games for Channel 4. So I worked on that project with my colleague Edie Slocum, and loved working with the company so much that I stayed there for 10 years and worked on some really cool projects. Worked with some brilliant people who I just absolutely adore still. In fact, I was texting one of the people that we found was Alex Brooker. Alex Brooker, who's one of the presenters of The Last Leg. He was a journalist at that time, and he had never done telly before, but we found him, trained him up, got him ready for the Paralympics, and now look where he is, where he took his mask off at the weekend on The Masked Singer as Bigfoot. So we were texting this morning about how exciting that was for him. So yeah, now get to work with lots of really fun and cool people. So I really enjoy what I do.
Oh wow, I mean it sounds so amazing and so cool. But it's crazy to think, isn't it? Like obviously theatre was your first love, but then if you hadn't seen the advertisement when you were watching Hollyoaks that one time, do you think you would have ever actually thought about working in TV?
No, never, never. I absolutely never would have. And I had never considered it even as an option. And I think that it's something that I talk about quite a lot with lots of people when when they're asking me about getting into the industry or how to encourage people, whether they're disabled or people from different backgrounds, into television. I think until you're shown that it's a possibility, for me anyway, I didn't even consider it. It's not that I thought, oh, I would like to do that, but I don't think I can. I didn't even think about it as an option. So yeah, had that advert not said directly, are you disabled and looking for a job? I wouldn't have even thought about it. And that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really like crazy to think about. But let's chat a little bit about your role at ITV then. So could you tell me a bit about that role and sort of what it entails?
Sure. So, my job title is I'm the one of the creative diversity partners. There's two of us, and I sit in the inclusion team. My boss, Addie Rawcliffe, is the group director of diversity and inclusion at ITV, and she sits on the management board. And our team, the responsibility of our team is to deliver on ITV's diversity and inclusion strategy. So to support the business to make sure that our content is inclusive and represents the world that we all live in. So our audience at home, everyone who's watching our programs, we should be reflecting that in the people that you see on our shows and in the teams that are producing those programs as well as within our workforce. So there's lots of people who work at ITV, thousands of us, in fact, and they're not just writers and directors. There's people who work in HR, people who work in finance, and all other manner of teams. So it's our job to make sure that the content that we produce reflects the people that are watching it, but also that we're creating opportunities. So I run a number of initiatives, like we're currently running a disabled writers program for disabled writers who are writing scripts as we speak. Sorry, you can hear the bell of my cat running around in the background. Writing scripts as we speak, where they'll have the opportunity to pitch those to our head of drama, Polly Hill, as well as kind of creating a really inclusive culture at ITV. So I work really closely with our colleague networks and look at the work that we should be doing to make sure that everybody who works at ITV feels comfortable and able to do their best work, and that they're able to be their best selves as well. So whether that is running events, education, or just rolling out resources to make sure that ITV feels like a place for everyone.
Right, okay. I mean, that all sounds brilliant. But what would you say are some of the shared challenges you found that the disabled community encounter sort of within the TV industry?
I think historically the industry has been a very inaccessible space and place for disabled people, and often the people who work in the industry don't think about disability or know very much about it, because either they haven't experienced it themselves or they haven't come across them in the workplace or in their worlds. So we're often having to break down some of those biases and those that lack of experience, but also just the way that the industry is built is inaccessible. If you think about just some of the studio spaces that we use, facilities, so the trucks that we use are not built accessibly, which means that there are some disabled people who just can't access them and literally get their foot in the door. So there is lots of work that we're doing at the moment at ITV, but also collaboratively with the other broadcasters to try and break some of that down. Jack Thorne, who's a writer, really famous, basically writes everything that you will have watched. He's amazing and a lovely person as well as being very talented. Has brought all of the broadcasters together after he really shone a light on the inaccessibility of the industry. And we were all doing lots of work in this space before, but we weren't doing it together. And that has created that movement. So the TV Access project is a big piece of work that we're all working on, and actually is seeing some really big changes. So I'm really excited about that, and looking forward to seeing what progresses we'll be making over the next few years.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that sounds great. I mean, would you say that the sort of accessibility level of the industry has improved from, say, like 5 or 10 years ago?
Definitely. I think, the Paralympics, let's say if we take the Paralympics as a bit of a starting point, I think there was lots of work happening before that, but the Paralympics, particularly for kind of the general public's point of view, was quite a turning point. The awareness of disability shifted, and we went from a community where kind of we were ignored or kind of shut away quite a lot to maybe being assumed as either all of us should be superhuman athletes, and if we're not, then what are we doing with our lives? So I mean, in some senses that was great, but that we needed to move the conversation on from that, which is, yes, some of us are superhuman athletes, and some of us, like me, are just normal people who are not Ellie Simmons when we get in the swimming pool, but we just like to go for a bit of a swim. So I think since the Paralympics, the progression has kind of been a bit up and down, but definitely in the last 3 years, I genuinely think there's been quite a shift in the accessibility and the change that has happened, and the awareness. I think now if you talk to producers and people who are leaders in the industry about disability, it's not a case of, oh, okay, what do we need to do about that? I hadn't really thought about it. Now it's more a case of, okay, yes, I understand, we're doing this, what else do we need to be doing? So I do genuinely think there's been a shift, but I think it requires all of us to continue the conversations and to not give up. And if anybody knows me well, they know that I'm quite persistent, and there's quite a kind of group of us who are working on this work quite closely, and we're all we don't give up, and we're egging each other on a little bit. So I think we're going to get there, but let's see.
Yeah, definitely. I think you will too, but I'm the same as you. I'm one of those people, if I get an idea in my head, that's it. I'm going with it. It's probably quite bad, but if I get an idea, I'm like, right, we're doing this. And I'm just one of those people. So I'm definitely similar to you in that regard.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all, Evie. I think that is an absolutely brilliant quality to have. And I'm sure that's why your podcast is doing so well, and how you've managed to get so many brilliant people on it. So I think keep going.
Oh, thank you. I mean, do you know what? I actually can't take too much credit for the podcast, because basically, to give you a very quick rundown of the story behind it, you've mentioned about having an amazing drama teacher, and I also have an amazing drama teacher.
Wow.
And when I first started high school, he kind of said to me, like, he complimented me about my voice, and he was like, do you want to start a podcast? And I was basically like, no, I'm good, thank you. Because I'd never listened to podcasts before. Like, I think when I started high school was 2021, so we were just kind of coming out of lockdown. I think in lockdown was when a lot of people sort of started podcasts.
Yeah.
And so I'd never really listened to any before, and I was like, I'm good, thanks. And every year from that point, so year 7, year 8, year 9, he would ask me whether I wanted to start a podcast, and every year I sort of went, I'm good for now, but I was thinking about it a little bit more. And then when it got to year 9, I was like, oh, do you know what? Yeah, sure, let's do it. I didn't really have much confidence in it. I kind of thought maybe we'll do it for a couple of months and we'll just see where it takes us. But it's literally gone from there. But what I'm basically trying to say is, even though I've gone off on a total tangent, what I'm basically trying to say is, I can't take any credit for the setting up of the podcast. All I can take credit for is the interviews that I do.
Well, I think you should take credit for them. They're great.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Now, sort of back to disability then, before I went off on a cute little tangent. Would you say that your own experiences as someone with a disability have like helped that shape your approach to your role in any way?
Definitely. I think all of my team have different lived experiences, and we all bring that to the work that we do. I don't think you can do this job without bringing your lived experience to your role. And I think it's a bit of a superpower in that sometimes that means that you can empathize with people in a different way than if I wasn't a disabled person, I wouldn't be able to. And that's not just from a direct connection in terms of lived experience. Obviously, I can understand and empathize with my disabled colleagues quite directly, because some of our experiences will be the same. But I also think, because of my experience of disability, I'm then able to empathize with my LGBTQ plus colleagues when they're talking about the challenges and barriers that they have, colleagues of color and what they're talking about. I think it's not all the same, but it means that I'm able to empathize, and there's a connection there. But it also means that I understand the importance of this work, and also I'm able to dip into some of my own personal experience as and when I need to, but also know when I need to take a step back and not use that and use the experience of the people that I'm working with. There are examples of times when some of the experience that I have is really directly linked. So you might have seen last year we did a film with Ellie Simmons where she was talking about her exploring her adoption story and finding her biological parents. And so I was able to advise the team on the voiceover and how we made sure that we were using the correct language and, telling that story really sensitively and authentically for her. I'm not adopted, but our disability is similar. So I'm able to kind of dip in and advise in that way. So, yeah, I think being a disabled person and using my disability in the work that I do is definitely a benefit for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, what would you say are some of the benefits of having a variety of disabled representation on screen?
I think it's so important. Like, it's literally the main focus of my job. I think, I don't know if you agree with this, Evie, but I often take it for granted that I'm a disabled person and therefore everyone has experienced some kind of disability before, whether that's they have a friend or a family member or they've worked with somebody. I kind of take that for granted, but actually a lot of people don't know much about disability themselves, or they've not experienced it. Do you find that sometimes when you're interacting with people?
Yeah, I do find that. I find a lot of the time when I'm interacting with people, because I use a cane. I'm totally blind, always have been, and so I use a cane.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times people will see either the cane or the fact that my eyes are slightly more hooded than they should be. And they will see that and then automatically either not talk to me because they're scared they'll do or say the wrong thing, or they will presume that they know everything about me. And I think it is literally just because a lot of people have never experienced someone with a disability, and therefore they just need educating on how to interact with people.
Absolutely, and that's where television plays a really important role. And I also think that's where television in all of its brilliant and various forms plays an important role, whether it's a really direct educational documentary about an individual or a particular topic that teaches the audience about that subject, or whether it is a really broad big entertainment show that just showcases disabled people with everybody else. So we were talking about Alex Brooker earlier. The fact that Alex was on Masked Singer as Bigfoot, his costume includes, so he was dressed as Bigfoot and his costume had a cast on one of his legs, and he walked on with a crutch under his arm. Now I knew from the set, like I actually didn't know that he was on the show, and I never know who's on the show. It's kept really, really super secret. So even though I work for ITV, I don't know. But the second he walked on stage on the first show, I knew that it was him. And some of the audience won't have known that it was him because they wouldn't have known Alex. But they would have grown throughout the series, getting to know him and getting to love that character. When he took his mask off and they found out who he was in the final last weekend, that's us showing the audience that disabled people are fun. Disabled people can do silly things like sit in a costume and sing pop songs in the brilliant way that Alex Brooker did. You know, I think it's important that we have both a range of different kinds of representation in terms of the different kinds of programs that we showcase disability in, but also, as you said, like the range of disabilities, because no one person is the same. If you showcase one disabled person, it's always going to be different to another disabled person, even if their disability is similar. So I think the more disabled people we can show on screen and the more stories we can tell, the more comfortable the audience will get with seeing disabled people and being around disabled people. So then we don't have that awful awkwardness that you just described, that I experience all the time too, where people don't know what to say, so they say nothing, or they try really hard and then they're a bit patronizing. We kind of just want people to talk to us how they would talk to anybody else, don't we? And I think we've still got a bit of a way to go to get there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we do as well. Now, obviously, we've talked a bit about accessibility, and I imagine that accessibility must be a key factor on set as well. So in what ways have you seen progress being made in this area?
Yeah, so this is where the TV Access Project is really playing quite a big role in this, because I think in the past, when I was starting out in the industry, accessibility wasn't really thought about at all, to the point where I once went for an interview for a job, and when I arrived in my wheelchair, they I think they did know that I was a wheelchair user when they invited me to the interview, but when I got there, they clearly hadn't thought about it, and the interview was supposed to be in a room that was up a flight of stairs, so that clearly wasn't going to happen. So they just interviewed me at the bottom of the stairs. So that was about 15 years ago. I really hope that doesn't happen anymore. I think people are starting to think about it a bit more. So now, you know, people will ask if you have any access requirements before asking somebody to come in. When the TV Access Project work started, I think there was one accessible honey wagon. So a honey wagon is basically a truck that cast use as their like dressing room and changing room, and it includes a toilet and kind of a space for them to hang out in whilst they're waiting to go on set for their scenes. There was only one available in the whole country. So if Ruth Madeley was going to be shooting at the same time as who else could we say? Ruth Madeley, as well as other names have completely gone out of my mind. And Matt Fraser needed to be in another show, one of them wouldn't be able to have an accessible honey wagon. So since then, I think we've got 5 that have been built, which is a huge investment from the facilities side of the industry, and that is only going to be increasing. Studios, we've set out a whole load of guidelines and guidance for accessibility in studios to make sure that those spaces are accessible and that they're thinking about it, particularly when they're building new ones and particularly when they're setting up for new shows. So in fact, actually one example of that, Saturday Night Takeaway, which is the new series of that, starts this weekend. So we'll probably be, I'm not sure when this episode will go out, but if it does go out whilst the series is still on, I would encourage you to watch it because it's one of my favourite shows, and the team are super lovely. But they've been doing lots of work in this space around making sure the studio is accessible, and the new set had a ramp built into it last year and has been improved this year. So there will be lots of access and lots of accessible features for you to notice on screen. So watch the series back if you can. And access coordinators is another thing that we've been rolling out. So that's a role where an individual is responsible for ensuring that the access requirements for cast and crew and anybody who's seen on or off screen making the show is put in place, and they are a trained person who is their go-to like their point of contact. So lots of great work happening, but there's still plenty more to be done for sure.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Now, on top of everything else you do, somehow you also have the time to be the chair of the BAFTA Disability Advisory Group. So, could you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know how many hours in a day I have, but somehow I managed to create a couple of extra. So yeah, I do have the privilege of chairing the BAFTA Disability Group. This came out of the BAFTA 2020 review. I was part of that group of people who were really taking a step back with BAFTA and saying, look, what do they need to be doing to make the BAFTA as a whole accessible and inclusive? It started just looking at as a film review for the film awards after it was noticed that lots of the nominees, it was very white and there wasn't much representation at all. So we did a whole process where we created lots of listening circles, brought lots of people in and met with them to talk about their experience of BAFTA. And out of that came a huge report that made 126 recommendations for BAFTA to improve their processes, what they did, how they did it, who they did it with, all of this. And a whole section of that report was written about disability specifically. And one of the recommendations was to create an advisory group because disabled members of BAFTA didn't feel heard, they didn't feel included, and there was a lot of barriers for disabled members both to attend screenings, to feel like they were part of the film awards and the television awards. So we created this group of people that comes together twice a year, and the team at BAFTA present to the team, ask us questions, ask our advice, and we're able to challenge them, make suggestions, and out of it has come some really great stuff. So I don't know if you watched the film awards that went out was it last weekend? I think it was last weekend. They're in the room, so they moved the venue to an accessible venue, so now that is accessible for particularly wheelchair users to attend. There's live access in the space, so there is BSL interpreters if you're there in person. We had some disabled people both being nominated for awards and disabled people giving awards out. So one of the citation readers was Ella Glendinning, who was a wheelchair user, and she was nominated for an award as a new director for her film. Are You There? Am I Alone Now? I think. Oh God, that's awful. I can't remember the title. It's an amazing film. And yeah, Michael J. Fox gave out the award. Gave out an award as well. So it's just super exciting, really, really exciting to see that visual representation of disability, because you, as a young person watching the BAFTAs, may well decide, Evie, because if you decide something, you will do it. You may well decide that you want to be a filmmaker and that you want to be a BAFTA award-winning filmmaker. And now seeing that and watching the BAFTAs back and having that access evidence to you hopefully will make people think, oh, I can do that. That is something that will include me too. So that's what we hope anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it will do. Now, what would you say has been your proudest moment in your life so far?
Oh, now that's a really hard question. There's been lots of really great things. I still can't quite believe it, but last year I was given an MBE for my services to disabled people, which meant that I got to meet Prince William, and he gave me my medal. And it's still quite surprising, and sometimes I forget and then remember that that's actually happened. So yeah, I think if ever I'm going to answer that question, I guess it would be wrong not to say that. I think I think my mum is very proud, and it's definitely not something that I expected to happen, but it is a really lovely thing to receive, and just kind of gives me that encouragement to carry on. I think the medal is lovely, and the award is so lovely to receive, but it's about the work that I get to do now, and the people that I get to meet, that I'm more excited about and more, I guess, proud of. Like, I love that I'm able to talk about the work that I help the teams with on Saturday Night Takeaway, or the work that I did for the Paralympics coverage for London 2012, and all of these great things that involved lots of so many brilliant people. That's the thing that makes me really excited as well.
Yeah, definitely. But like MBE, like Sam, that's amazing. You should be so proud of that. That's so cool.
I mean, it is, isn't it? Yeah. I still don't quite, I remember, so when I got the letter, it's really funny. They send you a letter. You don't know anything about it. You just get a letter randomly in the post. And it came in a brown envelope. So I thought I'd got a parking ticket. I opened the letter. So really shocked, and FaceTimed my mum and was like, is this real? What do you think? Is this real? So yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah, that is so cool. Now, looking forward to the future then, do you have any aspirations for the future?
I tend to not think about what I want to do next too much, because so much of what I've done has not really been that planned. The advice that I always give to everyone is always say yes. So if somebody offers you an opportunity, or talks to you about something that might be interesting, I always like to say, just say yes. Say yes to what you're being offered. So I don't know if I have any plans or aspirations other than it just being, let's do more of the same. I really love working on big projects that are going to create some real change for other people, and that they are able to then take that on to the next thing. So I think I will be at ITV for a while, because we get to do some really fun things. But who knows what the fun things will be coming up next. And hey, if it means that I get to meet more royal family and maybe get to do some international travel at some point, that would be fun too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You are such an amazing person, and the work that you do is phenomenal and definitely needed. Thank you so much. It's been so amazing to meet you.
You are far too kind, Evie. I think you're brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what else you do, because I think you're here for some great stuff. So I'm looking forward to it, and thank you so much for asking me to come on. I've absolutely loved chatting to you.
Oh, I'm so glad, and thank you so much. And thank you to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.